Okay, good morning everyone. So actually following on from Nick's stuff, so Nick was talking about the scars he's got. We're going to hear about how I gave them to people like Nick, actually. So my plan today is to talk to you about my experiences so project management is what my background is. So really this is about what I've learnt over my career of working on major projects, of how I see the best way of using project controls. And so that's the purpose of project controls from my perspective, from what I've learnt. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey of learning, which hopefully informs some discussion. It'll get you to understand where I've come from and the way I think about it and why. So actually calling it the project controls the root of success, I say, or are they? And so that's the bit I'm going to talk about a little bit throughout my chat this morning. I thought it'd be worthwhile just to give you a little bit of a sense of who I am, what my background is, and this is as much as to remind myself why it's appropriate for me to be standing in front of an experienced team like you to talk to you about what I think I've learnt, to give you a sense, but also some context to where I'm coming from. So my background, so Department of Defence, my entire career, it's about 38 years I've worked in defence. For the last 25 of those, I've worked in major acquisitions. On the aircraft side, I'm an aeronautical engineer by trade, ex-Air Force, and it's about 25 years ago I moved from the field into an area of working on major projects, working on significant modifications and acquisitions of new aircraft, like these transport aircraft here. I worked for a number of years also on guided weapons for international programs for guided weapons for fighter aircraft. And over about a decade, I spent some time in and out of the major project, which is the air-to-air refuelling aircraft, which is the large aircraft in that photograph. Again, an international program. I'd been a project manager embedded with the team in Europe. And towards the end, I was the project director who delivered the final stages of that project. And these experiences are the ones that I'm going to talk a bit about how I develop my view of how I use project controls and how I think that they can help projects. What I currently do is a little bit different now. I actually work in a different part of the business where I've worked every stage of projects, from the earliest through to final deliveries and project closure. Right now I'm back working in the very early stages of projects. So I work on what we call the capability management side of it. I'm no longer in the acquisition side, but it's still key parts of the business of projects. The early definition, the forward looking is some part of it. So my current responsibilities is I'm accountable for the delivery of the current day capabilities, which are satellite communications for the military, the ground stations that support those and deliver those, and so the transmit and receive capabilities for satellite communications. GPS, so navigation and timing. The GPS in our relationships with the US, we support that in a number of ways as well, not just as a user of it. And also long-range communications in high-frequency, long-range communications for the Defence Force as well, which, so GPS on the one side, the other side is all of our long-range worldwide communications. So the current capabilities, I make sure, so my job is to be accountable that they're working, that they're delivering them to the military user today. I also have a job, which is actually to me a little bit more fun. I have a fun job of going 10 years from now, what do we need in these same areas? Every single one of those capabilities right now are in the stages of getting the business cases through to government. So my job is to take our proposals and options to government to hopefully get their support to invest in those future capabilities. So the next round of satellite communications. These are aspirations. I am currently working, my team and I are building a business case for Australia to have its own satellite communications capability, something we don't have at the moment. We use others. GPS, the future of GPS, GPS Next, and capabilities that we can use to support that. They're the types of things I work on. That future program of work over the next decade is, again, it's aspirations at the moment. The business cases aren't yet fully endorsed, but if they do become so, it represents around about a $7 billion investment over the next 10 years. And so that's what I do, what I've done, and what I hopefully provide as a foundation of my experience to talk to you today. So, project controls and bits of them. Gantt charts. I was introduced to tools such as this in my Air Force days as a maintenance engineer, doing deeper maintenance on deeper maintenance on large aircraft, where aircraft would come in for over a month and you'd strip them down and repair them and maintain them. And this is the early 80s, I'm talking about where I started there. And we learnt as an organisation that we did things the way the manufacturer said, just do these things, and the way they listed them. And we learnt over time that wasn't necessarily the most efficient way of doing it. So planning it, scheduling it, making sure you've got the right finish start linkages, critical paths, those sorts of things we got better and better and better at. So I was introduced to them through maintenance. And then, as I say, about 25 years ago, I moved into acquisition. And I started then getting exposed to other parts of the project side. I wanted to move into this, and I was quite excited about it. And so I studied the various things. I did some of the courses. I learnt about the work breakdown structures. I learned about project plans and the various plans you need to do it, about risk management. And so essentially I'm building up those skills of the project controls bits that sit around a project. And I really connected with these. It's probably the engineer in me thought this is clearly the way it works. This is wonderful. And so I couldn't have gone after this harder. And so I went into the first project I worked on. I was a project engineer at that stage. And I started to build the schedules. I worked with the contractors on building schedules, trying to do all of these things I thought that I was taught. And that first project, coming into the mantra that I was using in that time, I'd got to was this: plan the work and then work the plan. And therefore you would succeed. It was guaranteed. And that was what I was taught, not just what I thought. I didn't just think it, but because I made it up myself. First project I did that on. A couple of years into it, it falls behind track. So we get behind schedule. It's not yet quite delivering what we were looking for. And so I think, okay, that hasn't gone as I'd hoped. I spoke to some people, some senior people in the organisation, and looking at it, essentially, what I was told at the time was, you need to go back and get a more detailed plan to schedule. Put more detail in your schedule. That was your problem. Your schedule wasn't right. Your plans weren't good enough. 400-page plans that you needed a much more detailed plan. That was your problem. So I went, okay, that's clearly was my problem. So I did exactly that. The next project I worked on, I now put a lot more effort into a more detailed schedule, spoke with more people involved in it, and said, yes, this is the schedule, this work. We had more detailed plans surrounding it. Then adding other skill sets, other training courses, Prince 2. So in the late 80s, early 90s, Prince 2 certainly in Australia had become a bit of a thing. And so this, again, it was about structure. Many of you would be very familiar with it. It's about structure, it's about stages, it's about plans, it's about having those artefacts that will give you success. So I did exactly that. And guess what happened on that project? The first bit. So really what I was being told, was plan the work and work the plan, but go at it harder. That was essentially what I was being told. So that's what I did. And that project, within a couple of years, was off schedule and not quite delivering what we wanted. So I had another crack. I then sat down, we did an analysis of this, worked out, okay, where have things gone wrong, what could we have done better? And essentially I was told, you didn't go hard enough again. You needed to have a much more detailed schedule. You needed to have much more detailed plans. You needed to sit down with a lot more time. You needed to all agree that. You needed to buy in it. You needed to follow it in great detail. And so, third time. Third time's a charm. This time I'm now project management side. I'm embedded in Madrid with Airbus Military on that tanker aircraft project. I'm actually in for a number of years, as embedded in with the company, so we're working day in, day out with them. So, very detailed schedules. We had weekly meetings on broad progress. We had monthly deep dives into schedule progress, into risk. We're checking through the risk. We're now adding things like detailed, more sophisticated understanding of things like earned value management. to set the progress. So every single month, we'd go through all of these things in great detail. And every quarter, we'd get the whole team together and do major project reviews that went over days. And we did that for a couple of years. And guess what? We'd got behind schedule. We weren't delivering what we wanted. And this was the point where I've got confused now. I had now become convinced that the problem was not me. Because prior to then, essentially what I was being told was you weren't doing a good enough job. We had brought in highly skilled and specialised schedule analysts to tell us how bad our schedule planning was and the like. And if you'd only got that right, you would have been right. How bad your risk planning was, and if you only got that right, everything would have been right. To tell us how we didn't do, when we found that things got off track early, we didn't do enough to fix it and keep it all back on track. Essentially, everything would have been fine if we just followed the plan. And I'm going, well, actually, I don't agree with you now. I've tried that. So what have we learned along the way? I think what you've probably learned is that I'm a slow learner. What I learned is I thought the problem probably wasn't me. So I went looking for something else. I didn't just go to the people I'd been going to, who were essentially me, but older and had done it more often. So I tried something different. I actually went looking for the people that I thought had succeeded in delivering projects. Succeeded in the sense that their projects had been, and often these were people that were brought in to take a project that had a problem, probably a very significant problem, and got it back on the rails. And one of them in particular, I'll mention his name, Chris Deeble, then Air Vice Marshal Chris Deeble. Today he's the Australian head of Northrop Grumman. He has worked in the Air Services Australia on major projects. He worked in the military on a number of projects. He worked on a number of things. The Boeing Wedgetail, the early warning aircraft, which we had significant problems in. He came in and worked for a number of years to get that back on track. He then was brought in to do exactly the same. So Air Vice Marshal, he's an Air Force officer, brought in to the Collins submarine sustainment to bring that back on track, and he did so. He and I worked a bit on the tanker project, so I spent a bit of time working with him and others like him, and to find out, well, what was different about what he did. I also got into the books. I did some study. I actually did a master's in complex project leadership, the important bit of which wasn't just a year about learning more detail about earned value management. It was actually learning about complexity and leadership of these major projects. And I came out the other end of that with a different view of things. And complexity, to me, is the secret here. That's the difference. So this is just a way of looking at complexity. It's a model of the Keynote framework. David Snowden pulled that together. It's just a way of looking at complexity, where you've got simple, complicated, complex, and chaotic. And the point started to become is that techniques that work for simple and even complicated activities don't work for complex activities. And this is where the problem started to lie. So things that you'd often hear, you've probably heard this one, the definition of insanity. It's doing the same thing over and over, but expecting a different result. That's based on the idea that there's a direct relationship between cause and effect all the time. And most of the time there is, except when there's not. And really what it is when you get into complexity. The closer you get to chaos in particular, so let's step to chaos. Chaos essentially is defined by the fact that you can do the same thing twice and get completely different results. And that happens. So the more complex you are, the more you're driving up the complexity sort of continuum, the more likely that this rule that we think is unbreakable no longer applies. And that complexity, the whole bit that I was taught about how you use project controls, if you do it right in a project, you will guarantee success, is based on this cause and effect relationship. It's based on an understanding of simple and complicated things, not complex and chaotic things. So why is there that uncertainty? And it's pretty simple. It's the people. People deliver major projects, not project plans, not schedules, not risk plans, not earned value management. People. And people have a habit of doing unpredictable things. I mentioned I'm an engineer, aeronautical engineer by trade, doing control systems engineering and design of control systems. You model out the control system. This will tell you a lot about me, maybe about engineers in general. You can model a person in control systems. They're modelled by an error and a delay. And that's a person in a control system. That was my thinking, basically. That come into this to go, now I'm horrified to realise that actually I've got to work with people. Oh my God. That's about the people. That's where the uncertainty lies. It's all about the people. That drives the complexity. So this is where I had to change the way I thought about things. I had to move to the bit, so rather than plan the work and work the plan, it's actually plan the work, you still have to do that, and work with the people. The people drive the success. So that's what I learnt from those conversations, and I suppose you could call it mentorship. The mentors that I spoke to about people who I valued for succeeding in these major projects in very difficult circumstances, from the academic study that I did to support that. And what I found is, having got to this point in my own thinking, my own understanding, that I then got a chance to apply it. So I mentioned on that tanker aircraft project, I'd worked on it embedded as a project manager for a number of years. I went away and did a couple of other things. And then I came back to that project as the project director, leading the project to its final conclusion at a point where we were 8 years behind schedule. We were in the project and contract management equivalent of World War I trench warfare. That we weren't delivering. We were in a toxic relationship between ourselves in the defence team and in our contractor team at Airbus. And we weren't going anywhere fast. And then, so what do I do differently? So I took a stab. Hey, I can't make it worse than it is. So I actually went with this new way of looking at it. Plan the work, but work with the people. So I made sure we all had an understanding of the work still to go. We all had an understanding of exactly where we're up to. Then parked that and focused on the relationship, how we worked together. How we worked together as a team to drive success. How do we get to the end? We weren't going to get to the end by lobbing grenades from each of our trenches, which is what we were doing, lawyers at 50 paces. We were never going to get to the end like that. People have got emotional about it. People are the complex part. They got emotionally invested in the point where I saw people on my Commonwealth team who really their big aim in life was to teach those bastards a lesson. And I go, hang on, isn't our aim in life to actually deliver the capability for the warfighter? Isn't that what we're meant to be doing? And the fact that we're 8 years late is a failure on our behalf, not on the contractor's behalf? Oh, no, it's because they're no bloody good. It was the discussion. So it's not just that everyone needed to improve the way we looked at it. A common goal and a common focus. The common goal is delivering the capability. Delivering the end product. In my case, defence for the warfighter. It could be, but it could be public services. It could be all sorts of things. The actual reason is to deliver it. There's not a point scoring along the way of who won. Everyone wins when we get to deliver it, and everyone loses if you're late and you don't deliver the capability that's needed. That focus is what I focused on with the team, and it took a lot of time. I remember the first couple of times I took that approach from working with the contractor, they clearly didn't trust me to do so, even though we spoke about it. But the trust to occur, so that took time. But over time, and this is where I got the confidence that what I'm talking to you about today works. Certainly worked for me. And so it's the way I've approached it ever since. Because that project, as I mentioned, we were 10 years into the project. We were by that stage, 8 or more years late on where we really were meant to be. We hadn't progressed at all in 3 years. I came into the project and adjusted the way we looked at things and changed it to this approach. Inside 2 years, we went from a point where there was even questioning whether we were going to deliver the capability at all. There was talk about stepping away from it because it wasn't getting there. It was what was called a major project of concern, which is a formal way of managing it between ourselves and government. I have the help of our minister at the time to help work through I had to work with them to explain what we were doing to fix it, so it had that level of visibility. Inside 2 years, we had accepted the final capability, delivered it into service. It was in the Middle East in operations. Inside 6 months, it became the coalition tanker of choice, the best one in the world. And we bought 2 more inside 2 years because of just a change of approach into managing the relationship side and focusing the team on success, the team on delivery, informed by the plan. That's why I'm comfortable that what I'm talking about works. So where I got to, the summary of all of that, success is built on relationships. Relationships are built on trust. And that trust comes from openness, transparency, and a common understanding. Now, hopefully we can see now where project control starts to fit in here. It has a key role. And this is where I come to on structuring that. Management and leadership, they're important halves of running any business. Management, to me, is more about the processes. Management is what you do. The process, the plans, your schedules, your risk management, secrets in the title, project management. Management is important, but so is leadership. Especially the more complex you get, strong leadership is really, really important. I say, so management to me is what you do. Leadership is who you want to be. Leadership's about your vision. It's about how you want to work. It's about building that team with a common goal. That leadership, project leadership, is equally as important. And what I found is that when I reflected back on the story I've just told you, which is a long career of slow learning, but I give myself a bit of a pass at the time because I was taught this along the way, and it was reinforced by our organisation along the way. I came to these sort of conclusions almost independently, but I don't say it wasn't just me. Many people like myself came to these sorts of conclusions through the same sorts of ways. We'd been focusing on project management to the expense of even thinking or talking about project leadership. That was the problem, and you need them both. Project management, that's in my mind where project controls fit. The management side, project leadership, is an important piece which is often missed. And it doesn't help that, like Nick, myself, an engineer who becomes a project manager, it's a common career progression. But I bring my engineering traits to that project manager. I mentioned the bit about the whole idea that I was going to have to focus on people was a bit horrifying to an engineer. They say an extroverted engineer is one who looks at your shoes when they're talking to you. So talking to people and realising it's about the people. So it wasn't the automatic reaction of an engineering team. So this is the world according to Luke, where I got to at the end of all of that. So project controls are a critical part of project management that informs the common understanding. So remember I spoke about how trust, built on transparency, common understandings, things like that. Project controls allow you to do that. That leaders use in trusting relationships to drive success. That's where the relationship between the two is. Well, according to Luke, you're quite allowed to disagree. I'm not preaching this. I'm not teaching it like a university course. It's about my experiences where I got to, that hopefully you get something out of about that discussion. So in conclusion, project controls are not the root of all success, I'm sorry to say to you, as project controls people. Relationships are. And good leaders use those project controls to inform and guide those relationships. That's where they get the success from. And I can actually underpin that now with my new job. The new job I spoke to you about, it's looking at future capabilities in space for Australia. It's a big and exciting undertaking where I'm supported by a team of people who don't have a lot of project management background, an organisation which isn't strong project management focused, and it wasn't built on a project management background. And I'm currently in a situation where I don't have those project controls information that I'm used to, and I miss it. I miss it a lot. It's making it very hard for me to lead that team and find that future vision and go towards it, help and lead us towards that future vision when I'm not really sure where we're at. And I'm struggling with that. And so that reinforced to me the importance of them both together. I'm struggling to do good leadership because I don't have that controls and management basis, that foundation on which to step off on. Again, confidence in my message because of what I'm experiencing right now. And that's it from me. Hopefully you got a little bit of something about my journey and my lessons, not just that I'm a slow learner. And we've got a few minutes for some questions if people like to ask them, and also I'm around for, probably I can sneak off after lunch, but I'm around till then if people want to have a chat. Thank you for your time. I can see a microphone up the back. Cheers, thank you. Appreciate it. Any questions? I can see there's someone over there at the back. Yep.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I think I agree with people. It's difficult to manage sometimes. So, what do you do to inspire people to work with you and join you along the journey to some outcome and goals for the company or the project?
Sure. And this is the sort of the traditional leadership sort of activities. It's about having the clarity of that vision, where you're trying to get to. And then communicating that to everyone, providing people a chance to involve in it, discuss it, look at people involved in determining how you're getting there. So this is the leadership management piece. A lot of the management piece is learning how you get there. The empowerment to the team, where they start to set up the bit of, well, if that's where we're trying to get to, this is how we can get there. Now, some of that, like the example I gave about the tanker piece, is that it required some change management because there were some embedded behaviours. And so it takes a bit of time when you're starting off on something new, it's a bit easier than if you've got an existing culture and behaviours to then change through your leadership. And that's a real challenge, that influence on the team. So there are traditional change management activities really which I employ in that leadership role. And it is the things about the clarity of vision. It's about finding people who are already on board and then sort of champions to help within the team, the influencers within the team. And that helps change a lot. And there's a couple of things, and what I found, and I'll give you an example of it, is that there are some people out there looking for the change already. And the example I gave, we're in World War I trench warfare, about a year after I started doing that. One of my team, she was actually one of the senior engineers, she came up to me, popped in the office and said, I'd like to have a chat. And I went, oh. And then she said, I just want to let you know that since we've been changing the way we do this, today, I'm enjoying coming to work. And I wasn't a year ago. And I couldn't have got a better compliment. But what it was is that she was waiting for this. She wanted this, and many of the team do. So a lot of it's actually giving people the permission to do that something different. You then strike a bit where a senior person I worked with some years ago said this to me once, is that when you come into those leadership things, sometimes if you can't change the people, you need to change the people. There comes a point when some people are never going to be on board. You've either got to work a way that they're not affecting the progress, or have them not there where they can't affect the progress. All of those things are important tools. And then so if they do come along, that inspiration to come along, it makes such a huge difference. And like I said, that lady that said, I now enjoy coming to work, which was cool. Excellent, thanks very much. And there's another question just down here.
You met Isha Huja from John Holland. Really good presentation. I'm sure people are definitely the number one criteria on any project to make it success. At the same time, I'm from a civil background, and most of the infrastructure projects happening right now, even if you have the best people on a project, you still need to make sure you have the right procedures and the right tools for them to enable the decision making a bit better and efficient way.
Yes.
So in addition to just the people, I think in today's complex world, you have to make sure that you've got the right people developing the processes, but also same time, the tools are right for them to do their job most efficiently from day one. Because if you just rely on having the right people in the team, but you don't provide them the right tools, you might not have the success that you originally envisaged on that particular project. Would you agree?
Sure. No, I agree with you. And if that didn't come out from the presentation, so I'll reinforce it. So my new mantra is plan the work and work with the people. You still have to plan the work. That's why my current position, some of that's missing, and it's making it a lot harder for me. And so you do have to, you've got to plan the work, you've got to have the processes in place, but they don't guarantee success in their own right. You need to have the two together. That's the management piece, the plans, the processes, the common ways of doing business, which give you efficiency, business efficiency, and it gives you consistency in decision-making processes. The governance, that's got to live there, management and leadership. They've got to go hand in hand. The leadership is more about the people, and that's where you've got to work it together.
Thank you.
Now, there's a question down the front here. I might be able to relay the question if it's not too long. Oh, no, the mic's coming anyway.
Thank you for the presentation. My name's Edward. I have a curiosity. You started off as an engineer. You're talking about being introverted.
Yes.
How did you convince yourself that you got to park some of your, engineering systems, logic thinking?
Yes.
And you need to go for the soft skills. And
yes.
What was it? What was that kind of thought or concept that kind of made you pivot and say, I've got to do this because this other way is just not going to get me there?
Sure. It was that point when I described in that journey there about when I worked with, maybe the day I decided the problem's probably not me. The problem is probably the way I'm doing it, the way I'm taught to do it. I'm not doing that badly. And that was the point. And it's you mentioned soft skills, and that's really what it is. It's the hard skills and soft skills need to go together. I was focusing on the hard skills, and that point after the third project in a row, that the hard skills weren't, and just being better and better at the hard skills weren't driving it. That was the point where I went, there's something different, there's something wrong. And then I researched and looked, success from other people was coming from those soft skills. That the study I did, the master's program I did in complex project leadership, a lot of it was about complexity, and then understanding how you deal with complexity is not just hard skills, it's soft skills. So you need the soft skills. So anything about me, and when I say I'm an introvert, it's not just to say I'm not an engineer, therefore an introvert, it's the other way around, I think. That my personality type, being a senior manager in our organisation, you've probably done them many yourselves, that I've had the assessments and they consistently tell me that I am naturally introverted. Anything you see, and that doesn't mean that introverts doesn't mean that they can't present in front of people. I'm perfectly comfortable doing this, but that's not necessary. I had to learn about that. But I had to learn that anything else is a learned skill. I've had to learn those soft skills deliberately because I got to the point where I came to the conclusion from my experiences and then study and seeing others that that's actually an important part of success. So I had to if I wanted to succeed in the profession that I'd chosen, I needed to become good at that as well. And so that's when I put into the effort to try and become better at those soft skills, fundamentally become a better leader. I had spent years doing things that I thought was leadership, but were actually management. So I had to create a different me to become a better leader, to become much more comfortable and capable in the soft skills, because I had determined that they're an important part of success.